Hey guys, tonight let's start with a story. Caught in the struggle between the descendants of the Silent Society over the ancient warning known as the Seventh Principle, she ultimately offered her own memories as a sacrifice, forging the dangerous knowledge into artistic symbols to build a subconscious moat for human civilization, lying dormant within our collective psyche. So, before you feel comfortable, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see people joining us from all over the world. When the clock struck midnight from the library's dome, Professor Samuel White's pen scratched an abrupt ink mark across his notebook. He jerked his head up, tearing his gaze from the open Theobald manuscript, only to find himself alone in the reading room. Oak bookshelves cast twisted shadows under the dim desk lamp, and the air hung heavy with the distinctive smell of old paper. Musty, mixed with turpentine wafting from the Guji restoration section. Rubbing his bloodshot eyes, he brushed his fingertips against the manuscript's gilded emblem, and a sharp dizziness pierced his temples. In the next instant, he stumbled forward as if weightless, his forehead slamming hard against the solid wood reading table. The manuscript snapped shut, and the brass clasp let out a clear clink, like a rest note in time. When Samuel woke in the university hospital's white ward, the sky outside had already turned pale gray with dawn. He struggled to sit up, only to find an 4-tube taped to his wrist, cold fluid trickling slowly into his veins. The attending physician pushed open the door, holding a medical record, his expression a mix of professional warmth and faint perplexity. "Professor White, do you remember what happened before you fainted? When we found you in the reading room, your blood pressure was dangerously low." The manuscript, Samuel's voice was dry as sandpaper, the Theobald manuscript. "I was reading pages 78 to 81, the chapter on cognitive resonance. The arguments were brilliant. They explained how—" "Professor," the doctor interrupted, handing him a document. "This is a copy of the manuscript we obtained from the library. Take a look." Samuel's eyes fell on the copy, and his face drained of color. Pages 78 to 81 were pure blankness, the natural texture of the paper clearly visible, not a single trace of ink. He trembled as he reached out, his fingertips brushing back and forth across the page, as if confirming the words hadn't merely been erased by some invisible force. "Impossible." I read them. The silver-white words were alive, moving. They said cognition is the cornerstone of reality, that consensus shapes existence. The doctor's brows furrowed deeper. "Professor, have you been under a lot of stress lately? Your assistant says you've been sleeping only 3 hours a night for a week to prepare for your lecture. We ran a full examination, no organic brain damage. Our initial diagnosis is hallucinations and memory disturbance caused by extreme exhaustion." Samuel threw off the covers, ignoring the doctor's protests as he rushed for the ward door. The sunlight in the corridor stung his eyes, and his steps stumbled as the clear words in his mind faded rapidly, like a sand painting washed away by the tide. A week later, Samuel stood in the university auditorium for his annual public lecture. The audience was packed with students and scholars, and the red lights of cameras blinked in the darkness. He stood on the stage with his life's work, 20 years of research on cognitive mapping in classical texts, projected on the screen behind him. When he reached the crucial point, he suddenly froze, his mouth opening but no sound coming out. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Sweat beaded on Samuel's forehead as he stared at the familiar terminology on the screen, feeling as if he were seeing it for the first time. "The core of cognitive mapping is—" he muttered, his eyes unfocused. "It's—" Finally, he collapsed onto the stage, burying his face in his hands, a choked sob escaping him. He had forgotten everything. His lifelong research, the theories he had once known by heart, leaving only a vast, silent void. The first time Leah Cole touched the Theobald manuscript, The texture sent a shiver through her. As a specialist in the university library's Guji restoration department, she had handled countless yellowed, fragile old books, but this 14th century manuscript felt different. Its pages, made of linen fibers, still retained their resilience after centuries, and though the gilded emblem on the cover was worn, its former intricacy was still visible. "This manuscript needs deacidification," her department head said, placing it on the restoration table with a serious expression. Professor White was reading it before he fainted. "The university administration is concerned. Handle it carefully, no mistakes." Leah nodded, slipped on cotton gloves, and flipped open the manuscript gently. The first 76 pages were legible, written in medieval Latin with neat handwriting and steady ink. When she turned to page 78, she found the blankness as described. She leaned closer, scanning the page inch by inch with a magnifying glass, even shining an ultraviolet light, but found no hidden traces, no scratches, no faint residue of faded ink. It was as if those 4 pages had been blank since the day they were made. "That's strange," her colleague Amy leaned over. "Professor White is an authority on medieval literature. How could he misread something like this? Could he really have been that exhausted?" Leah didn't reply. Her gaze lingered on the edge of the blank page, where there seemed to be an extremely faint, almost imperceptible glow, like an illusion caused by light refracting off some substance. She rubbed her eyes, and when she looked again, the glow was gone. In the days that followed, Leah spent hours with the manuscript in the restoration room. The deacidification process was tedious and meticulous, immersing the manuscript in a special solution, then blotting it dry with absorbent paper. Time and again, she thought of Professor Samuel's shattered state and the silver-white living words he had described. Curiosity twisted like a vine in her chest, and she began researching the Theobald manuscript, only to find scarce records. All she learned was that it had been acquired by the university library in the 17th century, with no known origin. To finish the deacidification, Leah pulled 2 all-nighters. On the 3rd dawn, as the sky outside turned pale purple, she finally completed the last step. She placed the manuscript on a drying rack, leaning back in her chair, exhausted, and closed her eyes to rub her temples. When she opened them again and looked at the manuscript, her heart skipped a beat. Faint silver-white words had appeared on the blank page 78. They weren't static. They flowed slowly, as if alive, their strokes weaving into complex, elegant patterns. Leah held her breath, leaning closer, but realized she couldn't recognize the script. It was neither Latin nor any ancient language she knew, more like a combination of symbols. She grabbed a pen and paper, desperate to record them, but the moment she bowed her head, the silver-white words vanished, leaving the page blank again. Leah stared, blinking hard, wondering if she too was hallucinating from exhaustion. But the lingering tension in her fingertips told her what she had seen was real. From that day on, Leah deliberately kept herself sleep-deprived. She discovered that the silver-white words only appeared when she was extremely tired, her consciousness hovering on the edge of drowsiness, a state she came to call twilight vision. She told Amy about her discovery, but it was dismissed as a joke. "Leah, have you caught whatever Professor White had? Don't push yourself too hard. You'll end up forgetting your own name, just like him." Leah didn't argue. She knew she needed professional help to prove her findings. She thought of Mark Stein, a researcher in the university's psychology department, known for his work on memory disorders and cognitive anomalies. He had been part of the team that evaluated Professor Samuel. In Mark's psychology lab, Leah laid out her discovery in full. Mark sat across from her, tapping his fingers on the desk, his expression clearly skeptical. "Ms. Cole, you're saying you can see words on these blank pages only when you're sleep-deprived? That sounds like a visual hallucination, a cognitive bias caused by fatigue." "I know it sounds absurd," Leah said, pulling out sketches of the symbols she had drawn. But these symbols follow a pattern. They're not my imagination. And Professor White isn't the only one. I checked the university hospital records. 3 other scholars from different fields have had similar symptoms. Sudden memory loss after handling ancient texts. Mark's tapping stopped. He stood, pulled a file from the cabinet, and laid it in front of her. Do you mean these 3? Astronomer Alan Parker, linguist Isabella Rossi, historian James Lee. Leah nodded. They all handled ancient texts from the library, and from what I've learned, each of those texts has blank pages in different places. Mark's brows furrowed. He had initially dismissed the cases as coincidences, collective memory disturbance caused by academic pressure, but Leah's discovery made him rethink. I need evidence, he said. If you can see the words again and record them, we might be able to analyze them linguistically and psychologically. To gather evidence, Leah set up a camera and ultraviolet light in the restoration room. She stayed awake for 3 days straight, and when twilight vision descended again, she turned on the camera, pointing it at the Theobald manuscript. The silver-white words appeared as expected. This time, instead of rushing to record them, she focused on their flow, trying to memorize their order and structure. After the words vanished, Leah played back the footage, only to find the blank page still blank, not a trace of the words. Why? She whispered, feeling discouraged. Maybe the words aren't visual. They're cognitive signals that act directly on the brain. Mark's voice came from the doorway. He had arrived unannounced. Cameras can't capture them because they exist only in the observer's consciousness. He walked to the restoration table, setting down a device he had brought, a brainwave monitor. If you're willing, we can run an experiment. When you see the words again, we'll monitor your brainwave activity to see if there's any abnormal cognitive function. Leah didn't hesitate, putting on the monitor's electrodes. This time, she entered twilight vision with Mark beside her. When the silver-white words appeared, the monitor let out a rapid beep. Mark stared at the screen, stunned. Your prefrontal and temporal lobes are unusually active. This isn't characteristic of hallucinations. It's more like receiving information. Before the words faded, Leah typed furiously on the keyboard, recording the symbols. This time, she transcribed a complete passage. When she pronounced the symbols aloud, Mark suddenly stumbled. Dizzy, wait, stop. Leah froze, looking at his pale face. Are you okay? When you said those symbols, strange images flashed through my mind, like star trajectories. Mark rubbed his temples. This is bizarre. They encrypted and saved the transcribed text on the computer. It read, "Cognition is the cornerstone. Consensus is reality. The 7th principle must not be spoken, must not be written, only confined to cognitive vacuum. The seal shall hold until the stars shift their paths once more." What is the 7th principle? Leah stared at the screen. And what does "when the stars shift their paths" mean? To find answers, Leah and Mark spent 3 days in the library's archives. A standalone old building with thick gray stone walls that stayed cool even in midsummer. The archivist was an elderly man named Silas, his back hunched like a bow, but his fingers nimble enough to pull any document they needed from the dusty shelves. He looked at Leah with an odd scrutiny, as if he already knew what secret she was chasing. The Silent Society? Silas paused, polishing a 16th century prayer book with a chamois cloth. That's forbidden. A history professor tried to research them 30 years ago, resigned suddenly, no one knows where he went. Leah caught the hint in his words. What do you know? Silas looked up at the dim light filtering through the archive's high windows, sighing deeply as he pulled a rusted brass key from his drawer. Come with me, he said. There's a compartment at the back of the archives. Holds things that shouldn't see the light. The compartment reeked of camphor and mold, lit only by a single dim bulb hanging from the ceiling. Silas opened an iron filing cabinet, revealing neatly stacked rolls of parchment and bound manuscripts. "These are collection records from the 18th century," he said, pulling out a roll of parchment sealed with red wax. "The only scattered mentions of the Silent Society are here." Leah put on gloves, unfurling the parchment gently. The handwriting was messier than the previous documents. The ink faded, but the core content was legible. Alongside Erasmus's formulaic theories, it listed the names and identities of the Silent Society's 7 members. Besides Erasmus, the mathematician and linguist, there was an astronomer, a physicist, a theologian, and even a renowned painter of the era. Why a painter? Mark wondered. What does art have to do with sealing knowledge? Maybe art is another form of cognitive carrier, Leah said, pointing to a line of small text. It says here, "Visual symbols can bear truths that cannot be spoken." Perhaps the painter helped design the seal visually. The faint patterns on the edges of the blank pages might be his work. Silas added, "My grandfather was the archivist here. He said some ancient texts' blank pages aren't truly blank. They're hidden using special methods, visible only to the right person at the right time." His gaze settled on Leah. "The fact that you can see the words means you're the right person." Leah's heart jolted. What does the right person mean? "I don't know." Silas shook his head. "My grandfather never said, only left a message. When the silver glow returns, the descendants of the silent ones shall choose." By the time they left the archives, night had fallen. Walking along the campus's tree-lined path, Leah couldn't shake the feeling of being followed. She glanced back, seeing a blurry figure standing in the street lamp's shadow, who vanished into the woods the moment they made eye contact. "Someone's watching us," Mark said, scanning the area warily. "Probably members of the Silent Society, either guardians or those seeking to unseal it." In the days that followed, strange things happened. Leah found the restoration room's doors and windows open after she left, and the Theobald manuscript was sometimes slightly moved. More unsettling, Amy told her her computer had been hacked, and all her Guji restoration data copied. "It's definitely about the Theobald manuscript," Amy said, pale-faced. "I reported it to the police, but they said there's no actual damage, so no case." "Leah, did you make someone angry lately?" Leah didn't tell Amy the truth, only reassuring her. She knew the target wasn't just the manuscript. It was her ability to see the glowing words. For safety, Mark suggested Leah move into his apartment, located in the university's faculty housing with better security. Leah hesitated, then agreed. That night, she had a clearer dream. Instead of an ancient library, she stood in a desolate desert. The sky was an eerie blood red, and the ground was covered in giant geometric patterns, identical to the symbols on the blank pages. A robed figure stood at the center of the patterns, back to her, writing with some glowing liquid on the sand. When the figure turned, Leah gasped. It had her face 7 parts similar. "Inheritor," the figure said, her voice like wind through an empty cave. "The 7th principle is neither curse nor blessing. It is a test." "Who are you?" Leah asked. "I am the first seal-bearer," the figure said, "and your ancestor." The 7 members of the Silent Society all carried the blood of an ancient civilization. "Our genes hold the key to deciphering the warning." As she spoke, the desert began to shake, and the geometric patterns blazed with harsh light. Leah felt a violent dizziness, jolting awake. She was covered in sweat, and Mark was looking at her anxiously. "You were talking in your sleep, muttering about symbols." "Inheritor." Leah told him about the dream, and his expression turned serious. "This might not be a normal dream. It could be the awakening of genetic memory. You said those scholars lost memory after touching the texts. Maybe they're also descendants of the Silent Society, unaware of their heritage." To test this, they sought out Alara Rossi, the daughter of linguist Isabella Rossi, and later leader of the Unsealers. At the time, they didn't know her identity, meeting her only to investigate the memory disorders. Alara's apartment was filled with ancient texts and astronomical instruments. A large star map hanging on the wall, marked with complex trajectories in red ink. Since my mother touched that 15th century linguistic manuscript, she's forgotten all her research, Alara said, pouring them coffee, a faint fanaticism in her eyes. Doctors said it's exhaustion, but I know better. That manuscript holds a secret. I've been studying it. Leah noticed a copy of the Theobald manuscript on her shelf, its blank pages annotated with pencil marks eerily similar to her sketches. Can you see the words too? Leah asked. Alara froze, then smiled. So we're kindred spirits. My mother couldn't, but I can. It took me 3 years to decipher part of the symbols. They're about the ultimate mysteries of human cognition. Mark seized the chance. What do you think these mysteries will bring? Evolution. Alara's eyes lit up. Complete cognitive evolution. Imagine if humans could break free from the limits of time perception, see past and future, what would that be like? The Guardians are cowards. They only see danger, not opportunity. After leaving Alara's apartment, Mark said worriedly, she's obsessed. If she collects all the fragments of the seventh principle, the consequences will be catastrophic. Leah fell into thought. Alara's words, though extreme, sowed a seed of doubt. Was the seventh principle only dangerous? Her ancestor in the dream had called it a test, suggesting it held both the potential for destruction and evolution. Just then, Leah's phone rang. It was Silas. His voice was urgent. Leah, get back to the archives. Someone broke into the compartment and stole the Silent Society's core documents. They rushed back. The compartment was in chaos. Iron filing cabinets thrown open, parchment scattered everywhere. Silas knelt on the floor, pale-faced, picking up the documents. I stepped out to take a call, and when I came back, it was like this. Stolen was Erasmus's original formula manuscript. It contains the seal's weaknesses. Leah inspected the scene, noticing the window latch pried open and a faint footprint on the floor. It was Alara, she said firmly. Only she knew we were researching this, and only she has motive. Mark contacted campus security, reviewing footage from around the archives. The culprit wore a black hoodie and mask, their face unrecognizable, but their build matched Alara's. More shocking, footage showed her getting into a black car after leaving the archives, driven by a doctor from the university hospital, the same one who had diagnosed Professor Samuel. So there are unsealers in the hospital too, Mark said grimly. They've been monitoring scholars with memory disorders, collecting fragments of the seventh principle. Silas sighed. The conflict between guardians and unsealers never ends. My grandfather said every 100 years, when celestial bodies align in a specific position, the seal weakens and both sides fight for control. Now that time has come again. Leah suddenly remembered the transcribed text. The seal shall hold until the stars shift their paths once more. If Silas was right, the total lunar eclipse wasn't just a good time to observe the seal. It was the unsealer's best chance to strike. We have to find Alara before the total lunar eclipse, Leah said, her eyes determined. Otherwise, it'll be too late. They searched frantically for Alara. According to security footage, the black car had headed to an abandoned observatory on the outskirts of the city. Leah and Mark drove there immediately. Perched on a hilltop, the observatory had been abandoned for decades. Its walls crumbling, windows shattered, resembling a giant ghost from a distance. Inside, the air smelled of decay. Discarded instrument parts littered the floor, and the walls were painted with complex symbols in red pigment, identical to those Leah had seen on the blank pages. Someone performed a ritual here. Mark knelt, touching the black powder residue on the floor. It's magnetite powder, same as in the spiritual ink. Suddenly, a faint sound came from the second floor. Leah and Mark exchanged glances, creeping up the stairs. In the observation room upstairs, Alara stood before a giant astronomical telescope, holding Erasmus's original manuscript, muttering incantations. Several people stood around her, including the university hospital doctor. "You're just in time," Alara turned, a strange smile on her face. "I need the right person to complete the final ritual." "Leah, you're perfect. What do you want?" Leah stepped back warily. "Simple," Alara waved the manuscript. "Activating the seventh principle in full requires a vessel, and you were born for that role. If you voluntarily accept the seventh principle, it will awaken completely, bringing humanity a new form of cognition." "You're crazy," Mark shouted. "You have no idea what the seventh principle really is. It will destroy humanity." "I do know." Alara's expression turned serious. "After my mother lost her memory, I studied the encrypted data. I know the seventh principle changes human perception of time. But that's not destruction. It's rebirth. Don't you see? When humans can perceive past, present, and future simultaneously, war, hunger, disease will disappear because we'll see the consequences of our actions. But have you considered that the human brain can't handle that cognitive load?" Leah retorted. "The Silent Society scholars are proof. They either lost their memories or committed suicide. You're gambling with all of humanity's fate. That's because they weren't strong enough." Alara's voice rose. "But you're different. You can see the glowing words, communicate with ancestors in dreams. Your brain can withstand the seventh principle's power. Trust me, Leah, we'll build a new world together." "I won't let you," Leah said, lunging for the manuscript. The hospital doctor blocked her, and Mark rushed forward, grappling with him. Chaos erupted in the observation room. Leah and Alara struggled on the floor, the manuscript slipping from Alara's grasp. Leah grabbed it, but Alara clung to her wrist. Just then, a white light flashed outside. The total lunar eclipse had begun. Moonlight reflected off the telescope's lens, illuminating the manuscript, which suddenly burst into intense light. Leah felt a powerful force surge into her body, countless images flashing through her mind. Rise and fall of an ancient civilization, rituals of the Silent Society, visions of the future. She saw the ancient civilization's tragic end, destroyed by its obsession with cognitive limits, and the chaos that would engulf humanity if time perception collapsed. "Let her go," Mark shouted, knocking out the hospital doctor and pulling Alara away. Leah collapsed to the floor, gasping for breath. The manuscript's light faded, and she finally understood the seventh principle's true nature. It wasn't a simple theory of time perception, but a virus that altered the very essence of human cognition. Once spread, it would plunge humanity into eternal chaos. For when the lines between past, present, and future blurred, cause and effect would crumble. "You saw it, didn't you?" Alara's face crumpled in despair. "You saw the visions." Leah nodded. The ancient civilization's warning was true. The seventh principle is a disaster, not evolution. At that moment, the observation room door swung open. Harper entered, followed by a group of men in black suits. "Alara, your madness ends here," Harper said in a deep voice. "The Guardians will not let you destroy everything." Alara's followers tensed, facing off against Harper's group. But Harper ignored them, approaching Leah and holding out his hand. "Ms. Cole, I know you've learned the truth. Now only you can help us strengthen the seal." "How?" Leah asked. "With your blood," Harper said. "The blood of the Silent Society's descendants holds the key to activating the spiritual ink. Only by mixing your blood with new spiritual ink can we re-strengthen the seal on those blank pages." Alara laughed bitterly. "It's useless, Harper. The seal is already crumbling. Even with her blood, you can only delay it, not stop it. On the summer solstice, when the sun is directly over the Tropic of Cancer and the stars align perfectly, the seventh principle will be released. Harper's expression darkened. We still have to try. They took Leah and Alara from the abandoned observatory. Alara was detained by the Guardians, placed under house arrest. Harper brought Leah to the Guardians' secret base, a hidden chamber beneath the library. The chamber was filled with ancient texts and instruments, portraits of the Silent Society's 7 members hanging on the walls. This is where the Silent Society began, Harper said. For 300 years, the Guardians have guarded the seal's secret here. He held out an ancient silver inkwell. This is the spiritual ink Erasmus left behind. Only a little remains. We need to mix your blood with new materials to recreate it. Leah stared at the inkwell, deep in thought. She remembered her ancestors' words in the dream, the visions of the future. Strengthening the seal was only a temporary fix. For a permanent solution, they needed a different approach. I have an idea, Leah said. The 7th principle is dangerous because its information is too direct for the human brain to process. But if we transform that information into an indirect form, like artistic symbols, could we preserve the warning without the danger? Harper paused, then's eyes lit up. You mean, like the painter member did? Using visual symbols to carry the information. Leah nodded. These symbols can't be directly understood, but they leave an imprint on the human subconscious. When humanity's cognitive level is advanced enough, we'll naturally decipher the warning. This is true inheritance, not just sealing. Harper thought for a moment, then nodded. This might be the best way, but to do it, you need to fully understand the 7th principle's information, a burden that could cost you your memory, like the scholars before you. I know, Leah said firmly, but it's the only way. I'm willing to pay that price to stop the disaster. Mark stepped forward anxiously. Leah, you can't do this. We can find another way. There is no other way, Leah said, looking at him with a gentle smile. Mark, thank you for being with me. If I lose my memory, promise me you'll remember. This was worth it. Mark's eyes filled with tears, knowing her mind was made up. In the days that followed, with the Guardian's help, Leah began systematically studying the 7th principle. Harper provided her with countless ancient texts, and Alara, having seen the truth, began cooperating, sharing all her research. During this time, Leah's twilight vision grew clearer. She saw more glowing words, understanding their deeper meaning. She discovered the 7th principle's core was a complex mathematical formula, revealing the fundamental connection between time and cognition. The symbols were its visual representation. As the summer solstice approached, anomalies in the library's underground stacks worsened. Frost spread further, the temperature dropping to -10 degrees Celsius. Even in thick down jackets, the cold was piercing. Ancient texts on the shelves began to glow faintly, the symbols on the blank pages growing clearer, as if about to float off the paper. Harper told Leah the seal was on the verge of collapse. On the summer solstice, the slightest external stimulus would send the 7th principle's information spreading across the campus, and even the world via the internet. On the morning of the summer solstice, Leah, Mark, and Harper went to the dome reading room. Alara was also brought there, her wrists cuffed, a mixture of guilt and hope in her eyes. Today, we make our final choice, Harper said. Leah, everything depends on you. Leah took a deep breath, walking to the reading table and opening the Theobald manuscript. Sunlight streamed through the dome's glass onto the blank pages, and the silver-white words appeared, clearer than ever. Leah closed her eyes, focusing, connecting her consciousness to the words. A flood of information surged into her mind. Images, formulas, truths about time and cognition. Her brain felt as if it were burning, but she persisted, transforming the information into artistic symbols, one by one. Mark watched anxiously as her fingers moved rapidly across the prepared drawing paper, the pen flowing with complex, elegant symbols, shifting like nebulas, dancing like flames, flowing like rivers, each stroke carrying profound meaning. As time passed, the temperature in the dome reading room dropped, tiny ice crystals forming in the air. The ancient texts on the table glowed brighter, the symbols on the blank pages lifting off, swirling around Leah. Alara and Harper held their breath, staring at the symbols, fearing disaster. When the sun reached its zenith, Leah's hand stopped. Sweat covered her face, her eyes unfocused, but her pen completed the final stroke with steady precision. At that moment, the floating symbols surged toward the drawing paper, pulled like iron to a magnet, merging into the artwork. The ancient text's glow faded instantly, the blank pages returning to normal, no trace of the silver-white words. The temperature in the dome reading room began to rise, the anomalies in the underground stacks disappearing. Leah looked at her symbol drawing, smiling faintly before collapsing. "Leah!" Mark shouted, rushing to catch her. Harper checked her pulse, sighing with relief. She's just exhausted, asleep. No life-threatening injuries, but her memory may be affected, as the scholars before her. Alara approached the drawing, staring at the complex symbols in awe. She did it. She transformed the seventh principle's warning into eternal art. Even if someone tries to decipher it, it will take wisdom and time, giving humanity enough preparation. Mark held Leah, looking at the drawing, his heart filled with pride and sorrow. He knew she had traded her memory to turn a dangerous warning into safe information, passing it to future generations. A few days later, Leah woke in the hospital. As Harper had warned, she had lost most of her memory, forgetting the Theobald manuscript, the Silent Society, the seventh principle. But she remembered how to draw, remembered the symbols lingering in her mind. Mark donated the symbol drawing to the National Museum, exhibited as a mysterious ancient work of art. No one understood its meaning, but standing before it, people felt an inexplicable awe, a silent voice in their hearts, warning them not to rush past the limits of cognition. Professor Samuel never fully regained his memory, but he abandoned his obsession with the Theobald manuscript, turning to the study of ancient artistic symbols. "These symbols hold humanity's most precious wisdom," he said, "more valuable than any theory." Alara was released from house arrest, abandoning her quest to unseal the seventh principle. She became a science writer, explaining cognitive science in accessible terms, warning people against overreaching cognitive limits. Harper continued leading the Guardians, protecting the ancient texts and secrets. He visited Leah occasionally, though she didn't recognize him. He always smiled and said, "You are humanity's hero. We will never forget." Mark remained in the psychology department, shifting his research to the relationship between artistic symbols and the unconscious. He hoped one day, through science, humanity would better understand Leah's warning. Sometimes, Leah would ask Mark, "Did I do something important before?" Mark would gently brush her hair, saying, "The greatest thing you ever did was use your brush to give humanity a future." Leah didn't understand, but she always smiled, continuing to paint the mysterious symbols, one after another, as if fulfilling a sacred mission. In the depths of distant space, an unknown planet still emitted faint signals. Their frequency matched Leah's symbols perfectly. It was as if eyes were watching Earth from the cosmos, waiting for the day humanity understood the warning, waiting for the true arrival of cognitive resonance. 6 months later, Leah's art exhibition opened at the National Museum. All works were the symbol drawings she had created after waking, each radiating mysterious charm. At the opening ceremony, Professor Samuel, guest of honor, gave a speech. "These symbols are not mere works of art. They are the boundaries of human cognition, beacons of civilization. In this age of speed and efficiency, we need such works to remind us. Some truths must be understood slowly, some boundaries must not be crossed lightly. The exhibition attracted scholars and artists from around the world. A linguistics professor from Oxford University, upon seeing the symbols, exclaimed, "These symbols share similarities with ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs and Sumerian cuneiform, yet they are more complex, more advanced. They may be an entirely new language system, a cognitive carrier beyond words." Mark stood in the crowd, watching Leah surrounded by reporters, a happy smile on her face. Though she had forgotten her past, her brush still conveyed vital information. Mark knew that was enough. After the exhibition, Mark took Leah to the dome reading room. The Theobald manuscript lay quietly on the reading table, pages 78 to 81 still blank. Leah reached out, touching the blank pages, and suddenly looked surprised. "There's something here. I can feel it." Mark's heart stirred. He knew Leah's memory was gone, but her connection to the symbols remained. Perhaps one day, when she picked up her brush again, she would paint more profound symbols, helping humanity better understand the ancient warning. Sunset streamed through the dome's glass, illuminating Leah, Mark, and the Theobald manuscript. On the blank pages, a faint silver-white glow seemed to reappear, like a seed of hope waiting to sprout. In the library's underground chamber, Harper watched the surveillance feed, a satisfied smile on his face. He picked up the phone, dialing a secret number. "The inheritance plan has succeeded. The vessel is transmitting information in a new form. Humanity's safety is temporarily assured." A deep voice came from the other end. "Well done, but we must not relax. The stars' paths are still shifting, and the next test will come soon. We must continue protecting the vessel, protecting humanity's future." Harper hung up, walking to the window and looking at the bright stars. He knew the Guardians' mission was far from over. They would continue guarding the silent secrets until humanity possessed the wisdom to face the ancient warning, to embrace the true arrival of cognitive resonance. As Leah and Mark left the library, night had fallen. The sky was dotted with stars, a bright moon hanging overhead. Leah looked up at the moon, suddenly saying, "Mark, I think I had a dream. There was a robed person who told me I'm an inheritor." Mark took her hand, his voice gentle. "Whoever you are, I'll be with you always." Leah smiled, leaning against his shoulder, staring at the stars. She didn't know her future or the symbol's true meaning, but she knew as long as she could paint, as long as she could convey those mysterious messages, her life had purpose. In this world of endless unknowns, human civilization was like a ship sailing the ocean. Leah's symbols were its guiding lighthouse. Though storms and dangers lay ahead, as long as the lighthouse stood, humanity would not lose its way. It would sail toward a better future. And those silent blank pages, those flowing silver-white words, those mysterious artistic symbols, they would forever guard humanity's most precious secret, waiting for the day cognitive resonance truly arrived, waiting for the day humanity finally understood the truth.